By the way, before we get started, we are trying some new things with this workshop. This presentation website here that we have is a little React project we're trying to cook up right now. Trying to see if we can make our own like package, some sort of small framework for React. We can just download from NPM and just set up a slide just on the go. We're trying to come up with a lot more features for this, trying to put like interactive code snippets, so like how you looked at the code sandbox, side-by-side codes and stuff like that. This is the first time we're using it, but we're gonna probably be adding a lot more features into this in the future. All right, so I went through, I guess I'll go like really quickly, just speed run through the slides in case you have any questions. So component is just a function. You can pass into it a lot of things. You can pass into a prop. It has state. You can keep track of those and act based upon them. So this is how you would make a component. You can have it in its own file. You can also have it in just all files together. I'll go over that in more detail when we go through the MOMO clicker. But essentially, you can either make it like this, where it's just a function, the name of the function, the parameters that it might take, and then its return and any logic you might have in there. So that's one way to do it, but you can also do it closer to this, where it's you're basically, yes. All right. So this way, we're basically saving an anonymous function into a variable. That's kind of what's going on here. So this is the variable, and then here's the anonymous function, where it's just the variables or the parameters that go into the function here. So either way works. You can create functions in either way you want, but I normally do this for reasons unknown to me, to be honest. All right. So then we have component properties. Those are just like variable function parameters. You can pass things into the function here and then use it inside of your component. Just make sure to surround it with squiggly brackets, or you can have one props variable up here that you can tap into by doing props dot the name of the variable that's passed in. In my opinion, this way is a little bit more clear, because anyone looking at your code can see what props are you're expecting and which props you're going to be seeing in your codes. Because if you see an image, you'll clearly know that, hey, I'm using an image in this component. However, if you just keep it as props, you won't have to dig through the code here and see that, hey, I'm using a props.image here, so this component accepts a prop. So it's a little bit more clear this way, in my opinion. Next, we talked about state, and state is just a way to save information about a component, things that it's keeping track of. You can act on it, you can update it, all of those things. State, just like it returns two things. Here, if I can find the... Where is use state being used in this example? I guess it's not. All right, we'll go here. So state will return two things. I guess you can pass into it one thing first, and this one thing is the initial value. So what's happening here, the coins will be set to 0 when you start. And this can be anything. It can be a string that says hi. It can be an object. It can be literally anything. But in our case, we're just setting it to 0 because we want coins to start at 0. This thing is going to return two different pieces of code that we can use. It's going to return the variable that we want, the actual value. This is how we can read it. If you're familiar with object-oriented, this is sort of similar to getters and setters. So this would be the getter. You can get the value. You can look at the value. And then this is the setter, where you can use it to set the coins. You can set whatever you want. And we're using it in here. So you set, and you just put the new value that you want in there. Any questions on this so far? All right. Next, we talked about use effect. So use effect, it takes two things here. It takes the effect, which is essentially just a function, and then it takes a dependencies array, which is optional, but always put a dependency array. If you're not gonna need it to depend on anything, just leave an empty array there. And the way this works is if you leave the array empty, it's gonna run this effect, this function, once whenever the component mounts. So if you have like a confetti effect you want to play whenever the component first mounts, you can kind of use this and just leave the dependency array empty, because it's going to run once, and then confetti will pop up, and then it'll never run again until it re-renders. Keep in mind though, if you have state that's changing, it might re-render again, and it's going to play this over and over. Also, if you want to keep track of a specific state, you can put that in the dependency array, which is what we did in this example. So this is the use effect. Here's the function we passed in. And this function doesn't have to be an anonymous function. We could have technically passed this function in here. Normally they are anonymous as far as I've used, but you can pass any function in here. And so what this does with this array is that it's looking at the coins, and every time the coins update, it's going to run this. So it's going to put it in the console in our example here.